Okay. Good morning and welcome to Unlocking the Potential of Xero, presented by Martin Mellor. I'd like to welcome your speaker today, Martin. Are you here, Martin?
I am indeed. Morning, everybody. Thanks, Rory.
No problem at all. Well, I'll let you crack on, Martin, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. Right, guys, I'm just going to fire up the slides and go back one page. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session on unlocking the potential of Xero. Xero is a cloud accounting system. I'm going to try and make the session as practical as possible. And therefore, as Rory just said, it would be great to hear from you as we go along. So do please engage. Do please use the chat functionality. Talk to me, ask questions. We'll all get far more from the session if you kind of engage and interact with me. I do quite a bit of finance training, which I'll explain in a second. But what I do find is typically if one person has got a question, then chances are someone else has got the same question as well. So don't be shy about asking questions as we go along through the session. Okay, so let's get started. In terms of what we're going to cover as a rough outline, I'm going to give a brief introduction to cloud accounting, what it is, what it's designed to do, how accounting systems have evolved over time, some of the drivers for why you might use cloud accounting. We're going to go through some of the key features of the system, and at various points I will flip into Xero just to show you it on screen as well. There is a demo version of Xero that I can use that isn't using any client data or anything like that. So some of those key features are the dashboard, which is the main kind of hub when you log into the system. We'll also talk about bank feeds. You can effectively connect your bank direct into the Xero system, which makes life a lot easier from an accounting perspective. We'll look at invoicing, how you deal with receipts and bills and how you can really save yourself some time. And we'll also, what makes cloud accounting ever more powerful is the infrastructure, ecosystem, and apps and integrations that you can expand the system so it can do all sorts of different things. And I'll look at some of the most popular, but I'll also reference where you can go and find whether there's anything else that might be useful to you and your business. I'm also really keen, just in general, to talk about the fact that accounts and accounting information and financial information doesn't really mean much unless you actually do something with it. So we'll talk about outputs and reports and what I call the so what. So my main aim is to try and encourage you to use the information that you might have in an accounting system to make better decisions in your business. And I'll just talk a little bit about that. And finally, I'll just touch on some of the support that's out there, advisors that can help you and considerations you might make in choosing an advisor to work with before any kind of final questions towards the end of the session. As Rory said, we'll be taking a break halfway through as well. Okay, so who am I? Why am I here? Why am I in front of you? Well, I am what's called a chartered management accountant. I have been for the last kind of 20, 25 years. And for the last 5 years or so, I've run my own business, and that it does two things. So I run Mellor Financial Management, where I provide outsourced or portfolio finance director services to small and medium-sized businesses. And in doing that, I'm a Xero partner. The business is a Xero partner. We work with our clients often remotely, and Xero really enables us to do that. I did an awful lot of research when I was setting the business up as to what technology would be the best to use, and it's something that we're constantly refreshing, and Xero is the market leading cloud accounting system in the country. That said, there are others, and when I talk to potential clients, one of the things that I would say is, if you're already using one of the other systems, and by that I mean things like QuickBooks, Free Agent, Zoho, Cashflow, there's no reason particularly to move to Xero. The main thing is actually that you're using a system of some description. Xero just happens to be my favorite, and it's the one that I think gives the most opportunity to most people. Alongside the finance director services, I also run training. So, and that comprises two main parts. So I work with clients to help people that aren't financial, that don't have a background in finance and accounting, to better understand finance and accounting and all that jargon and all that terminology that we accountants use that can really trip people up. And as part of that, we offer Xero training as well. And I'm really delighted to say that we are the first Xero partner organization to be able to offer Xero certification to clients as well. So if you wanted to take your understanding of the system to a higher level, then Xero certification is a way that you can do that. And we really recently became approved in order to do that. Okay. So I joined one of the sessions last week and I learned something new about LinkedIn, and it was that you have a QR code that means that people can connect with you via LinkedIn. So if any of you want to screenshot with a QR scanner and connect with me via this session, I'll leave that up there for a second, and I'll do it again at the end as well. And as I say, I'd encourage you to use the chat functionality and to engage with me as we go through the system. I'm just gonna try and get my menu in the right place so that I can fire up the first poll. Apologies, always the way with technology, isn't it? Okay. So the question that you should see is, do you already use Xero or another cloud accounting system? It'd be just great for me to get a handle on where people are at, what they do, what they don't do at the moment. That's great. We've got 13 responses in so far. 14. Just a few more to come through. Final kind of shout out for anyone to complete. Okay. So we've got roughly half of you, 56% already use Xero, 13% use another system, and 35% don't use a system as yet. That's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. So I'll just end that now. And those numbers have just slightly changed just at the end. So 53% use Xero, 12% use another system. Those of you that do use another system, would you mind dropping in the chat box which systems you use? And the 35%, are any of you thinking of using Xero shortly? Sage line 50, okay. Thank you, Matthew. Thinking of using Xero, Steve, thank you. Matthew, Glover, thinking about using Xero, thank you. Anybody else willing to share what systems they use? Samantha's thinking Xero, excellent. Okay, that's helpful, thank you guys. And I should have said, in terms of the LinkedIn thing, if any of you weren't on the session, if you go into the LinkedIn mobile app, there is in the top menu bar a little square symbol, and if you click on that, you'd be able to scan in the QR code there. But as I say, I'll flash it up again towards the end of today's session. Okay, right. The systems evolution. I'm not going to bore you too much with this, but believe it or not, the system that we use to record information financially was developed as far back as 1458. And it's a system that we call double entry bookkeeping. I'm not going to talk about kind of too much about what that is today. You'll be pleased to know. I'm kind of keen that you all stay awake, so we won't go there. But the automation has increased in pace, the pace of change, as with lots of technology and lots of systems and digitization, the pace of change has increased rapidly. It might surprise you to learn that 1955 was the first point in which a business actually used a computer to do its accounting. It was General Electric that did that. In 1998, QuickBooks was formed as a business. QuickBooks is an American business, and it's owned by a company called Intuit, and they are actually the biggest provider of cloud accounting systems in the world because they have the biggest share in America. Xero is a New Zealand-based company, and they are the biggest provider in the UK. Both of those systems, QuickBooks and Xero, have overtaken Sage in terms of market share amongst the small and medium-sized business community. So for years and years and years, Sage was kind of the only answer for lots of people. But what you tended to find was that people needed a bit of a degree in Sage to understand how it works, and it would sit on a computer in the corner of the office. A really unwieldy backup process with people running CD-ROMs and downloads and bank reconciliations and all sorts of things. A little bit Sage slightly took their eye off the ball in terms of the advent of cloud and what that might do. But that's not the only reason for it. And I'll explain kind of why I think that Xero in particular, but QuickBooks as well, have stolen a march on Xero. And now in 2020, we're in a position where Xero has over 2 million business users globally, which is extraordinary, really. Okay. And kind of that's what Sage looked like. Is that familiar as a view to any of you? It's really not particularly user friendly. It's not easy on the eye. When I flash up Xero, and those of you that already got it will know exactly what I mean. It's much more visually pleasing. It's much simpler. It's much more user friendly. Another massive element of the system's evolution is gone are the days of the need to keep the shoebox of receipts. How many of you kind of used to have to dump a bag or a shoebox or a box full of receipts on the accountant's desk and leave them to try and wade through it all and make sense of it all? Digitization means that that's not necessary anymore. And it's a massive time saver, but it saves paper, it saves space. So you can really make the systems work for you, and that's the key for me. Is it shouldn't be the tail wagging the dog in terms of the system. The system should fit with you and what you're trying to do in your business, because people that start a business, let's face it, you don't do that because you want to spend all of your time managing the input of data into a system. Unless you're me, of course, and you've set up an accounting type business. But so there's the real benefit of some of this stuff is in making things streamlined. So why it matters, there's two main reasons why it matters. I'll come back to the bit on the left of the screen in a second, but on the right, that's just meant to represent the fact that the world is becoming an ever more technological and ever more digital place. And engaging with your customer and the functionality that you might need to provide to your customer is only increasing. And as I say, one of the main benefits of a system like Xero and like their competitors is that those systems are evolving with you. They're in some ways at the forefront of that evolution of the technology that's available to you as a small business, small, medium-sized business. How many of you have heard of the thing called making tax digital? If you could tell me through the chat function, that would be great. You have, Samantha, you've raised your hand. Excellent, that's super. Amy has, Steve has, Matthew, yeah. You haven't, Andrea, don't worry. Okay, can I check whether there's anyone on the line from HMRC before I say what I'm about to say? If you are, I suggest close your ears just for a second. I love HMRC. They're my favourite organisation in the whole world. Really, they are. So making tax digital is an initiative from HMRC that all businesses should move their accounting records onto a digital or online system. But in true HMRC government style, the deadline for when that needs to happen keeps on getting pushed back. And it's the ultimate irony of an organisation who at times dictate that I have to engage with them by letter, by physically posted letter, but they want all businesses to use an online digital accounting system. So it is coming. They have already in part rolled part of this out. So if your business is VAT registered and has a VAT registered turnover of more than £85,000, then you need an online system to interact with HMRC in terms of your VAT returns. For people that aren't at that threshold yet, but are VAT registered, by 2022, you're going to need to use a system like Xero or something similar. By 2023, even self-employed people that file a self-assessment tax return, so you don't have a limited company, you're just self-employed and you have what's called sole trader status, you're going to need some form of digital accounting system to keep your records. There's also a mind that companies will need to file corporation tax returns not just once a year, but quarterly, so on the same time frame that people currently do VAT. So that looms in the background as a driver of change. But actually, I would say that, put that aside, the functionality and the capability of the systems is by far a greater reason to adopt cloud technology. Okay, I'm just going to do the second poll, if I can get my mouse to work. So the question here is, what is your biggest challenge with accounting and finance in general? Is it a lack of time? Is it a lack of expertise or knowledge? A lack of training, a lack of budget, or all of the above? Okay, we're nearly there. We've got 16 responses in. Final shout for any final responses. Okay. So we have lack of time, 22%, lack of expertise and knowledge, 28%, and all of the above, 50%. So it's not lack of training, it's not lack of budget. And that's pretty consistent with what I would expect. And it also fits with some of the key benefits of the system. So 4 key benefits, as I see it, of Xero. There are more, but these are the key benefits for me. So the first is time. Systemization and automatic feeds can dramatically reduce the amount of time that's spent on administrative tasks, and that frees up time to add more value to your business. As I say, chances are, my guess is that if you've started your own business, you didn't do that because you wanted to be keying receipts into a system. You did that because you had a passion to do what you do, or you wanted to work for yourself, you wanted freedom, you wanted the work-life balance, any number of factors, all of which mean that actually what you really want is the time to do that. But what people find, what I observe is people find that over time they get dragged in to just administrative tasks, and they get bogged down in doing a whole load of things that isn't actually what they thought they were going to do when they set up their own business. So the availability of the systems and the way they work can significantly reduce the amount of time and effort that you spend. So a lot of the functionality of the system is available through a phone or a tablet, on the go, on the move. And cloud hosting makes the information accessible from any internet-enabled device, rather than that old world Sage terminal sat in the corner of an office somewhere that there was only one person in the office actually knew how to use, and you didn't necessarily understand an awful lot about what they were talking about. Second huge benefit of these things is, as I said, the way that I work with clients and many other accountants, is the beauty of these systems is they give you a two-way window into the system. So the accountant can be much more proactive, reviewing your data, helping you to run your business, giving you insight to help you make better decisions, because they don't have to leave their office to have access to your information. They can also get a real sense of how up to date you are, whether there's anything significant that's happening in your business. As accountants and as partners of Xero, we are privy to some information that isn't privy. Okay, we've got some more raised hands. Is that a question? I'll just pause and let it come up if it is a question. Rory, if you can shout if there's a question comes through. There isn't, so the accountant can be much more proactive, and there's a big debate ongoing in the accounting profession about the provision of what are called advisory services. It's about the difference between churning out a set of accounts because you have to be compliant, versus looking at those accounts and finding out what they actually tell you about the business and how it's performing. If the more accessible that information is, and the more available it is, and the more up to date it is, the easier it is to do that. And of course, we've all just been through the biggest change to our economy and to the way that we operate in a lifetime, in a generation or more. But those businesses that had smart systems, record keeping, accurate information, up to date information, doesn't mean you're not facing challenges, but you're much better able to deal with them and to answer questions and to make decisions within your business if you have that visibility, and if you have someone else who has expertise who can also see that information. The third main benefit is that the balance of functionality to price, in my opinion, is extremely cost effective. Now, this all depends on your perception of value, and it depends on the functionality that you would use, but the costs are pretty low. And when we talk about the app ecosystem and infrastructure in due course, some of the things that you can make the systems do become pretty comprehensive, pretty cost effectively. What I mean by an ERP system is enterprise resource planning. So the biggest businesses in the world use what are called ERP systems, and typically that would be provided by someone like Oracle or SAP, systems providers like that, and it integrates all of their functions together, and it provides effectively an online management system for the business that would incorporate finance, purchasing, HR, any number of other things, and that's called enterprise resource planning. What Xero and the cloud accounting systems allow you to do is effectively bolt the bits on that you need, nothing more, nothing less, and create a system that is right for your business. And the great thing about it is you can adapt that and evolve that over time. So you don't need to do everything on day one. but you can amend and adapt and work with your customers and your process flow. And we'll look at the availability of some of the apps a bit later. And then finally, the ever increasing use of AI makes the systems ever smarter, ever richer in terms of their functionality and the decision support. These systems are pretty good at learning what you do and how you do it, and therefore automating as much as possible. But crucially, and here's a link to the second point, there is nothing that is done in a Xero system that can't be undone, unpicked, corrected, particularly, I would suggest, by your accountant or someone who knows what they're doing. So automation is brilliant, but also basically you can't break it. There's nothing that can't be undone in the system. And that is hugely empowering in terms of helping you to go forward and to do things at pace. Okay. Any questions so far, guys?
We haven't got anything in the Q&A or chat box, but I do encourage all participants to make use of the Q&A box if you've got any questions that come to mind, and we'll pick up on those.
Thank you. Thanks, Rory. Okay, right, so this will be familiar to many of you that have got the system. This is what's called the dashboard, okay? And this is effectively the entry point into the system. So you can see the difference between what you're looking at here. Those of you that have not seen it, you can see the difference between what you're looking at here and the screenshot of the Sage system that I flashed up earlier. A few key things that I'll point out on this system. So the first thing is you can set up as many bank and credit card feeds as you wish, and that is a direct link into your bank account or your credit card, and it sucks the information out of your bank and your credit card. It saves an enormous amount of time in terms of reconciling bank transactions, which we'll talk about a bit more in a second. It really helps piece various elements of the jigsaw when it comes to financial information together. One of the biggest challenges that businesses face is cash and cash flow and cash management. And the fact that the accounting system directly links to the bank rather than needing to download a bank statement and things like that is a huge benefit of the system. The blue bar along the top is a menu bar, and in Xero and lots of the other systems, basically there's at least 2 ways that you can get to every part of the system. So those are drop-down menus, which I can show you shortly. Okay, I think we have. Okay, so this, Xero, Matthew, this is what the dashboard looks like. I'll flip into a demo version of the system in a second and give you a bit more of a tour. Aaron, so as I tried to say at the start, it kind of depends on what your business does and the infrastructure. I personally wouldn't see any need to move from QuickBooks to Xero because QuickBooks is pretty good. My personal preference is Xero, but now that you're on QuickBooks, I don't see a huge need to move. It'd be interesting to know if the person that has suggested that to you has a particular reason for saying so. But no, I would, unless something dramatic's happening, I would stick with what you've got and just understand it better and help yourself to use it a bit more. Okay. Do you have to have a business bank account? No, you don't have to have a business bank account. It can be a personal bank account, Steve. So the reason it says business bank account is that's the name prescribed to the account that feed is for. Okay, so it could be a personal bank account. But equally, in terms of legal structure, it depends on the structure of your business. If you're a limited company, then you are required to have a business bank account anyway. A couple of other things to point out about this this view, and that's reconciliation feed. So if you can see the blue box that says reconcile 26 items, that is something that helps point out to you that some action is required, some action needs to be undertaken. Is the feed for a particular package. Karen, so do you mean in terms of subscription level for Xero? This is the standard subscription level. The bank feeds would be on any of their subscription levels. So the core functionality is the same. What they do though is they have different levels of basically how you can use the system, what you can do with it. So they all have what's called cash book functionality, which is the bank bit. What they don't all have is some of the more fancy, whizzier elements of functionality. In terms of cost, your range of cost would partly depend on how you source the system. So when I talk about advisors, there is some advisors are able to get discounts. There are also often pricing offers and things like that that you can take advantage of. But for this system that I'm showing you now in its configuration as it is, that would cost roughly £20–25 a month to have a system of this nature. At the cheapest end of the spectrum, you could pay £10 a month, but it has much more limited functionality. Okay. So the reconciliation feed is all about tying up the accounts information with the bank statement. So to say, for example, the payment that we received on the 12th of August was related to such and such an invoice that we raised on the 30th of July. And so it links that payment receipt into your bank with the invoice that you issue to your customer, and that has several implications. One, it enables you to correlate the information to say, yes, we've been paid that money, and that's a sale that we made. But two, it stops you going and chasing that customer for payment. And some of the functionality I'll talk about a bit later is around how you can set payment reminders and how you can effectively automate chasing people for getting paid. And that's another massive issue for businesses, and these systems really take the support to the next level in terms of what you can do to try and get paid, to get money. And there's no more important task in your business than getting paid. You just don't want to spend loads of time doing it. Okay. Also, you'll see there are various graphs and charts and things like that. So the one bottom left, you can configure this dashboard to show you various things that you might want it to show you. So it's not definitive how it looks. You can have it show you certain things, and someone else might choose something slightly different. So that view of cash in and out is giving you a really simple bar chart, the blue bars being how much money you've received month by month, and the grey bars being how much money you've paid. And that'll just give you a really, really easy eyeball on how much money you might have available, particularly when you combine that with what the bank statement is telling you you've got as a balance 2 boxes higher up. There's an account watch list. You can change what these accounts are. So what I mean by account watch list is these are basically categories. So one might be your income or different types of income. Others might be key elements of cost in your business. You can have 3, 4, 5 of them. You can pick what those accounts are. And it's just giving you an instant summary of what is happening in those accounts at any given point in time. So it doesn't mean the information isn't available in more detail further into the system, but it's just giving you that instant smack in the face about what some of the key things that affect your business and what state they might be. which leads us on to the next two boxes down below. You've got a graphical summary of the money that's owed to you by your customers. How old is it? When was it due for payment? How much is overdue as an amount? How many transactions does that reflect? How many invoices are not yet due? It gives you a sense of when you think they might get paid. Any number of useful bits of information just in terms of focusing your time and effort to make sure you maximize the return of cash into your business. Equally, there is the bills you need to pay. That's the money that you owe to other people. So that's the flip side. When is that coming up that you're going to need to pay people? And when you put those two pieces of information together with the cash in out summary, it starts to help you get a picture of what's our cash position likely to be in the next month, in the next 2 months, in the next 3 months. I'm pretty sure most of you have had challenges in terms of managing cash flow in the last few months. And some of this information is really useful just to provide prompts, just to give you a nudge about the things that you're likely to want to have a look at. Right, let me flip into the system and just show you what it looks like. Bear with me. And this is where I need to relog in my password because I've not been in for a little while. Hopefully everybody can see that system. So this is what I'd got the screenshot of. You can also see down the bottom, chopped off that view, was details of any expense claims. So have you done any mileage? Obviously, it's been hard to do mileage recently. Have you got any personal expenses that need to be repaid to you? Right down at the bottom here, there is Edit Dashboard. And this is how I could completely change the view that we see by removing some of those elements. And hopefully the Zoom has still been able to keep up with the changes that I've made, but I've totally changed what that dashboard looks like. If that's what works for me, if I want a really simple view of what I've got, and here, this is just showing you a day-by-day view of what your bank balance is. There's the menu bar up here, and various other things that we'll come on to. Okay. If I flip back to the slides. Okay. So that's the dashboard. That's kind of the entry point into the system. That's what you see the first time you go in there. The bank feed is an integral part of it, as I say. So it's sucking information from your bank on a daily basis. That statement information is updated daily. So it's never, credit cards sometimes take a couple of days extra, but it's never more than a couple of days out of date. And it gives you a really, really simple view of the transactions and the things that have been happening in your business. These symbols it enables you for your business to reconcile, to check things, to make sure there haven't been errors, to see who's paid you, to see what bills have been paid, what's left to do, what more can you be doing to get payment. And all of that helps you to report for your business. It helps you produce those outputs and understand what you're looking at. Okay, another key element of the system is in invoicing, and I'll kind of point out some of the key features of invoicing. So this is where you would invoice your customer for things that you've done. This is also functionality that is available through the mobile app, through the tablet app. So you don't need to be in a fixed physical place to do this. And late payment and getting paid, as I say, are some of the key challenges that businesses face. But also, lots of businesses are guilty of not issuing invoices quickly. Okay, and so the system really helps you to do that. So you can do things on the go. Second thing down the left-hand side, you can create what are called repeating invoice templates. So if your business works with clients on a retainer basis, on an ongoing basis, where you are going to invoice that same client regularly, once a month, once a week, once a fortnight, whatever that time frame is, you can set up the invoice template once, push a button, and it will automatically send until you tell it to stop sending that invoice. That doesn't mean you can't amend it, so you can amend the amount, you can add extra things on, but you've created it once and it's saving you time and effort. I'll come back to the bottom left, the payment services, in a second. But there's a question. If you have Xero linked to Stripe and PayPal for an e-commerce website, who should send a VAT sale receipt? Xero or Stripe, PayPal? To your customer, do you mean, Steve? I would suggest it should be you. Okay. Okay. Yes. And you can integrate Stripe and PayPal. That's what I mean by payment services down in the bottom left. So there are multiple ways in which you can link payment services into Xero as a system. And what I mean by payment services is basically things that help you get paid. So what Steve's described there, Stripe is a way that someone can pay using a credit card. PayPal, most of you will be familiar with PayPal. There's also things where you can set up subscriptions. You can collect direct debits. You can allow people through an online link the ability to just click that link and pay that invoice via a credit card. Oh, come back. Okay. Oh, gone too far now. Does it have plug-in functionality for applications for payment, construction industry, rather than VAT invoicing? There are some construction industry specific applications that you can plug in, Matthew. So where you're dealing with CIS, where you're dealing with applications, where you're dealing with retainers, things like that. Some of the they're not ones that I work with particularly on an ongoing basis because I don't work with any construction clients. But yes, you can use the system in that way. Draw your attention to branding. So you can load logos. You can have what are called invoicing themes. So you can have multiple themes of invoices that allow you, for example, to have one invoice template that is for customers for one brand, another template for customers that have another brand. You can change the time frame in which you're asking to get paid and link that to an invoice theme and template. So you can really go to town on creating the infrastructure that you need to support your business. Now, it might be that actually all you need is one simple template, and that's fine. But it looks so much more professional to get an invoice from the system that has your logo on. You can add your payment details, add your bank details. You can also plug in the payment services that I've just mentioned. It just looks smarter. You also email the invoice straight from the system to your customer. And you can change the message that goes with that invoice. You can adapt what that's saying. You can say, thank you for working with us. Here's your invoice. We'd greatly appreciate payment. whatever it is that you want to say, you can make that template say it. Invoice reminders are also a significant thing. So there is the functionality within Xero, but also a couple of apps that do this perhaps even better, is to set reminders to send your customers notification that the invoice is coming due for payment, that it's gone past due, that it's now significantly past due. You can play around with the timing of when you send those reminders and what those messages say. Statistically, it's likely that if you use invoice reminders, you'll get paid 30% quicker than if you don't use invoice reminders. Okay, so it can have a significant impact on the cash collection for your business. And as I say, the payment services, there's any number, and we'll talk about some of the examples. Oh, sorry, I keep trying to move my mouse to get the menu down and it's not quite doing it. Let me just check. Okay, and I'm going to flip back into the system again to show you a bit more of this functionality. So hopefully you can see the Xero system again. And if I wanted to raise an invoice for a customer, there's a couple of ways that I can do that. So if I make the invoices owed to you visible again, this button here on the home screen, new sales invoice, would enable me to do that. And the system will run slightly slowly because we're on the Zoom call at the moment. So what you'll find in here is there's a range of things that you can do and functionality that you can add to the invoice, and it's ultimately a matter of choice. So in the to box, you can start typing the name of your customer. And if that customer is loaded as a contact in Xero, then starting to type will start to autofill options. As you can see here, I've started typing B and it's come up with any number of options. You'll also see that a couple of them here, Basket Case and Bayside Club, have email addresses associated with that customer. That means we can automate that sending of the invoice out of the system to that customer. So let's say we're going to raise an invoice for Basket Case. We've got today's date. We could change that if we wanted. We could make it a historic date. We could make it a future date. You can have as a default set up that all your invoices are to be paid in 30 days time. You'll see that the branding option here is called the very orange invoice. There are some other options. Only time recording. Does Xero provide that functionality? There is an HR app that I'll mention shortly, Karen. So you can pick the apps as you wish. Sorry, the theme. So we're going to go with standard. If you haven't got a default payment terms set up, what I find the easiest way to work it out is if I wanted to be paid in 7 days, I just simply type +7 into the due date, and that works out what 7 days is from today's date. Equally, if I wanted that to be 45 days, I'd type +45 and do the same thing, and it would work it out. I can add a reference. I've got an invoice number that automatically creates a sequence. Down here, you can add, you can have preloaded information about the things that you are going to supply. You've got quantity, you've got unit price, whether you're offering a discount, what account code it's going to be allocated to. So if this is an invoice to a customer, it's generally going to be sales or income. It might be other revenue or something like that. We can also set as a default, but we can change whether or not we're including or excluding tax, or whether there is no VAT to be included. And we can create regions and other what are called tracking categories that help enrich the information that you review as you pop out of reporting out of the system. We can then click preview, and that shows us what that invoice is going to look like. So we can just double check that we're happy with it before we press send. We have the ability to add attachments. So if you need to provide a report, so forgive me, was it Matthew that mentioned the construction? So if you wanted to provide a report to your customer, you could also attach that report to the invoice as a PDF so that the customer's got that information to help them approve your invoice so that you get paid. And that's the key to all of this, is you want your stuff approving quickly so that you get paid as quickly as possible. Okay. And you can click save and leave it there for later, or you can click approve, and once you've clicked approve, you then have the ability to send out of the system direct to your customer. You can also allow that invoice to send a copy to yourself so that you know that it's gone. You can see what's been sent. It's also just a useful double check that there aren't any errors, that there isn't anything that you didn't want to go to the customer. You can just validate that because it can send it to yourself. So that's the route into invoicing through the main dashboard. You can also get to it through the main menu. And there's a couple of other bits of functionality in here. So this menu in the sales overview is where you would create a new repeating invoice. Oh, it's gone slow. Let's hope it catches up. So new repeating invoice is one way you could say, I want to set the recurrence to be every month or every week or every quarter. We've got a summary of what's awaiting approval, what's awaiting payment, what's been paid, and what are the repeating invoices. So here you can see some in draft. So they're ones that are waiting to be sent to the customer. This business currently has the invoice reminders switched off. But if we wanted to switch them on, we would click on that menu. And we can set up the payment reminders. So here you can see I'm going to email my customers 7 days overdue, 14 days overdue, 21 days overdue. But also I can change those dates. So I could edit the 7 days to make it 3 days. I could edit the 14 days to make it 10 days. Whatever you want those periods to be, you can make the system do it for you. And it automates that communication with your client. Linked to that, you can also send your customers statements. So if you are dealing with clients regularly, you're doing a lot of transactions, then statements are a really useful way to communicate with your customer about the business that they've done with you, the payments that they've made, and the new invoices that you've raised. So if we go into our business menu and go to our invoices, this button here, send statements, would enable you to do that. And that's just that you can set the time frame, you can set the date range, whether you want it to be the last month, whether you want it to be the last quarter, whatever period of time you want that to be. And again, if the invoice address is loaded into the system, then you can automatically send that to your client, to your customer. Okay, we've been collecting some questions in the chat. I'm just going to run through one more page and then we'll pause and take those questions before our break. So those are the invoices out. Equally, what about dealing with bills coming in? And maybe we'll do the questions now, and then we'll come back to that afterwards. So shall we go to the questions section? If I take loads of small payments via e-commerce, will it automate a sales invoice to these people? Steve, it depends on the setup that you've got with your payment service provider and what web functionality you've got. So if you're using something like WooCommerce or Shopify, it's possible, but it requires setup to do it. You haven't got, Andrea, you haven't got the branding option on your invoices. Yeah, you might have restricted access. So if you can, can you see, Andrea, if you click on the company name in the top left of your system and you go to the settings menu, in fact, let me show you. Okay, so here you have the menu. If you click on the settings, apologies, the system just takes a minute or two whilst we're on Zoom. Can you see invoice settings, Andrea, through that menu? I don't know if you're able to log into your system at the moment whilst we're talking. Amy, hi Amy. If you use the item field, it depends on what you've populated, but the whole point of the item field is that you generally try and use it to auto-populate the description. Ultimately, the combination of item and description, it depends on the services that you're providing and what you're doing and how much variation versus standardization that there is. I would expect that the point of using itemization is that you would then want to auto-populate the description. Hope that helps. Okay, have we got a response? I think so. The menu come down. Passive income start. Right, let me come back to you, Matthew, just a second. So Andrea, if you have access to this invoice settings menu, then you would be able to create a branding theme. You might just not know how to get there. So if you only ever, if at the moment you only have one branding theme in this part of the system, it wouldn't give you that option on an invoice that you raise to change it because there's nothing to change it to. So what you would need to do is go through the settings menu, invoice settings, and then create new branding theme. And it's fairly self-explanatory what you would do, but you might want to work with your accountant to do it. But you can change any number of things, add terms and conditions, quotes, make it a quote functionality, make it a credit note functionality, all sorts of things. Add a different logo, add a different picture, blah, blah, blah. Once you've created a branding theme and saved it in the invoice settings section, you then have the capacity to pick the drop down on your invoice template to choose which one that you're going to use. Okay. Right. My questions back. Right, Matthew, what about passive income style businesses where no invoices are raised by us, so money arrives from Apple, Google on an end of month basis? Is Xero and other cloud accounting software a bit of overkill? I was hoping for a solution that meant little requirement to fully blown accountant, yet still be compliant with it. It seems Xero has great features. Yes, albeit, so there are some apps, there are some systems that specifically cope with Amazon sellers, for example. Ultimately, Matthew, yeah, you know, it's a horses for courses choice. If you don't need all of the functionality and you're not part of the population that's required to interact with HMRC on a digital basis, then you don't necessarily need to go all singing, all dancing on this system yet. or any system for that matter. You might be able to just use one of the apps in isolation. But equally, as I say, some of the richness of functionality is in allowing you to understand the costs that your business has, the income that you have, where it's coming from, how you can affect the performance of your business. Now, if you're not ready for that, then no need to kind of push go on this right now. Okay. Any other questions before we pause for that 5-minute comfort break? Rory, is there anything that I've missed?
No, I think you've got them all there. Yeah, perfect. So
okay,
you can take 5 minutes now if you like.
Yeah, lovely. So yeah, perfect. So it says 11:03 on my computer. So if we want to take 5 minutes, that'd be great. Perfect. Thank you, guys. And do feel free to pop any questions through whilst we're on the break, obviously. Hi everybody, welcome back. Steve Clare. I was just typing an answer, but I will answer it, your question, kind of physically, as it were, in a second. Let me just reshare the screen. So Steve's asked everybody about his specific requirements. So he's got a business that sells things via a website. He's then got plugged into that. So the website has a back end that is something like WooCommerce. You might also use Shopify. That's what his customer is engaging with. That site then has what's called a plugin, which takes the payment, and in that case it's Stripe, which processes credit cards, PayPal, which allows that kind of money transfer, and then the integration into the accounting software. Ultimately, Steve, apologies for being slightly vague, but there are a couple of options, and it depends on how those systems have been configured in the first place. I don't know if you've had any help in doing that, or whether it's something you've done yourself or what, but for really small transactions, for small amounts of money, probably the simplest is to have the payment processor set up, Stripe, PayPal, whatever, set up to issue the receipt. However, the slight downside to that is what that means is what you get as stuff coming into your accounting system is likely to be an amalgamation of several payments at once. So if you've made 10 sales on any given day, then it's likely that you get paid all of those 10 payments in one amount of money, which makes it harder for you to understand and reconcile, including the fees that the payment processor has taken. So when I said that it would make sense for Xero to issue, it does ultimately depend on the volume and value of those transactions. So, and there's probably no perfect solution, to be honest. But equally, it's one of those things that may well be worth a kind of conversation in slower time with someone that can help you. Hope that does help in part. Okay, I think a couple of other things have come in. Oh, forgive me. Getting a bit trigger happy again. Charlotte, my business designs and sells wallpapers and fabrics, which cost quite a lot of money to develop. One of the things I want to use Xero to do is to look at which designs are most profitable, taking into account their development costs. Yeah, I sell by invoice to trade and through a Shopify e-commerce website. I'd like to link my Shopify site. When I looked into doing that, I only have one payment stream, so can't see which product sells best. Forgive me, Charlotte, I'm not a Shopify expert, but that feels like a question to pose to Shopify kind of help support functions. Because yeah, so the way Xero would deal with it would be to have some of what's called the tracking categories, where you've got different product lines so that you can then produce reporting that looks at that. In terms of that feed, I don't know enough about Shopify and the way it presents the information to you to be able to specifically answer that. Apologies. But as I say, it's probably worth reaching out to the Shopify help functionality. And again, a bit like I just said to Steve, probably a conversation in slower time and someone to have a look at the actual system. Ian, we use Stripe and PayPal, and Xero issues the VAT receipts and automatically. Yeah, so that's what I say. Both possibilities are there, Steve, but it depends on the kind of volume and scale. So thank you for that, Steve. Right, guys. Okay, second half. Well done for sticking, and some great questions coming through. And hopefully those of you that haven't yet used Xero are starting to see from the shape and the type of questions that are coming through some of the stuff that you can do. But equally, a lot of this stuff is slightly generic. So making it really, really specifically fit your business can take a bit of time and effort. Let me just double check. Okay, I think that's all of the questions so far. Right, receipts and payments, receipts and bills. So in the same way that I showed you raising an invoice, we could go into Xero as a system and we could add a bill from our supplier, and that's perfectly possible. However, there are much quicker and easier ways to deal with this. So there is an app or various apps that you can have loaded on your phone that integrate into your system. The one that I use is Receipt Bank. So if I was wanting to, if I'd been out, had a meeting with someone, I'd got a receipt for a couple of coffees, something like that, or a parking receipt or any of those kind of things, train tickets, I would just simply use my phone, take a photograph of the receipt, and that would load into my Receipt Bank system. My Receipt Bank system then talks to Xero. This is where some of the AI starts to work. That system picks out whether there is VAT included in that invoice. It picks out who it's from, the date that that receipt is for. It starts to automate. If you travel on Northern Rail a lot, it starts to realize that Northern Rail costs will be allocated into your travel element of your accounting system. And it presents defaults. It doesn't mean that you can't change any of these things. But basically, once you've taken that picture, gone is the need to keep the paper. The Receipt Bank system archives the picture, so you are compliant from an HMRC perspective in terms of keeping your records. It's something that you can do on the move quickly. It takes no time at all. You can bin the paper, and it fires straight into your system. More than that, for those supplies where you receive a paper invoice, you can do the same thing. So it's not a receipt, it's an invoice from a customer. You can take a photograph of the invoice. Even more than that, for those suppliers where you receive a invoice on a PDF attached to an email, your account with Receipt Bank, and there are others. So Xero has a version of a system called HubDoc as well, and there's one called Expensify. You can forward the email that you've received with the PDF bill on straight into your Receipt Bank system, and it will go through the same process. It will allocate that receipt into the appropriate accounting code in your accounts, and it'll present that as a bill. It'll show up in your system as cost, and then when you pay that bill, you can match that payment with that bill, and you say, yes, that payment of £510 to such and such a company is the payment of the bill owing £510. It really speeds things up. It reduces the amount of paper. There's some whizzy stuff you can do with the automation. As I say, there's a variety of options. So Xero themselves bought a system called HubDoc, but the market leader is Receipt Bank. And as I say, you can have it set up so that the minute you open up the app on your phone, it automatically takes you to the camera to take the picture. Okay. And the only time they struggle is when the photograph is too blurry, but basically they're pretty effective, and it takes care of looking after all of your bills. But as I say, there's still the option to load a bill yourself, to say we've received this. Say for example, you receive a bill through from a customer. Do these systems cost? Yes, they do, Steve. It depends on how and where you're sourcing your systems from. So if you just bear with me, I'll talk about the options. But basically, I said at the start that these systems allow you to create something bespoke for you, and they're pretty cost effective. But that doesn't mean they don't cost any money at all. HubDoc can be accessed as part of the Xero subscription because it's owned by Xero. Receipt Bank is a separate subscription, but equally, if you in effect, as part of your fee to an accountant, they can effectively own your subscription with all these various providers, and it has a couple of benefits. They have access to slightly preferential pricing, and they can wrap that cost in. So if you were to go and buy a Receipt Bank subscription, for example, yourself, it would cost you £10 a month for up to 50 receipts and bills that you want to process. and then it goes up in increments of £10 a month for each 50 receipts and bills. But there are different pricing plans and different ways that you can access that. And so some of the clients I work with, I hold the subscription for Xero, I hold the subscription for Receipt Bank. It enables us to offer those services in a much more cost-effective way. So it would depend on how you are sourcing the systems. Karen, I said I'll be answering it in this second half of that. So if you just hold fire, I'll get to it. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. Okay. And Amy saying, for receipt scanning, if it's just yourself and you have the Xero app on your phone, when you share a photo of the receipt, it gives you the option to send it directly to Xero. Therefore, you don't need other apps packages, but this only really works if it's just you in the business sending receipts. Yeah, absolutely, Amy. Like there's a really, really low cost way of doing all this stuff. And then there's some other stuff that for not too much money just gives you extra additional functionality. And as you say, Amy, great point. You can make it work for you. So it depends on what you consider to be expensive. And I appreciate if you're in a startup phase and money is tight, do you necessarily want to spend money on Receipt Bank? But equally, as I say, if you talk to an advisor, you may well be able to access it for way less than the £10 anyway. And yeah, Karen, thank you. Just bear with me because I'm going to use it as an example to show you some functionality in Xero. So I'm not dodging the question, believe me. I will come back to it. Yeah, you have the email address, Ian. Email it, and basically, so Receipt Bank started before that functionality existed in Xero. So there is an element of some of this stuff was created to meet a need, and Xero has seen that need, and they've then amended and adapted the system, and they now offer more functionality than they used to. Where Receipt Bank does add some additional value is in terms of some of the support that you get, and particularly if it's done via an accounting firm, as I say. As an end user, you could, so one of you, forgive me, I forget the name, one of you was talking about simplicity and whether you could just have integrations with Apple and different online providers. At a really simple level, you can just use Receipt Bank to capture all your expense information if you're a sole trader. So the gain is minimal, Ian, over and above the functionality in Xero as it stands now. But if you've been a historic Receipt Bank user, then it's kind of a bit harder to switch away and go on to the pure Xero option. It does also do some additional stuff in terms of reporting and things like that in Receipt Bank, and the archiving and some of the storing of stuff that just does add a little bit of value. But I take your point. Okay, which leads me to apps. Anyone want to guess at how many additional apps there are in the Xero infrastructure, in the ecosystem? How many things, if you wanted to, could you connect to your Xero system? And this is not a poll, by the way. Get the menu down again, apologies. Karen's guessed 200, good guess, Karen. Anyone else willing to hazard a guess? 45, Andrea. 200. I like it, Charlotte. So basically, you're playing a game with Karen as to who goes with the. If it's above 200, then you win. Is that what's happening? There are more than 800. There are more than 800 apps in the Xero infrastructure ecosystem. And to your point about time tracking, Karen, I'll come on to that. These are the award, so Xero has Best App Partner Awards. I'm going to show you the app marketplace in a second. What you'll see for these is, so these are 5 that were picked out for 2020 as award winners. I am going to mention Fluidly and Go Cardless shortly. Xavier is interesting because actually that's more of a tool for accountants to use than it is for you as an end user, as a business. And then Released is one for the property industry, and Approval Max is about kind of getting payments in and out. And again, all of these things will cost money, and it's about whether you would get sufficient value and what it would tell you, what it speeds up, what it automates, what time it gives you back, potentially. So without further ado, to get to Karen's question. Hopefully you can see now I'm showing you what are called new and noteworthy apps. This is, so the web address for this is apps.xero.com/UK. Okay. Down the left-hand side of my screen, and if anyone can't see this, then do please let me know. There are all the different functions which you might look to use an app for. So accountants tools, bills and expenses, CRM links, financial services, e-commerce, inventory, etc., etc. Time tracking, Karen. Hopefully the system will play ball and keep up. The one that most people, and again, it would depend slightly on what you're doing, the one that I have recommended to me most often is the one that's third along here. It's Deputy. Equally, see Xero projects here, you would have to pay an additional subscription to Xero to have Xero projects. So it doesn't just mean that you can access that functionality for free. So payroll is an add-on for Xero, projects is an add-on for Xero, but some of the other stuff that people have been talking about has been integrated, and ultimately they're making choices about what they integrate, where and how. So let us see some chat come through. Oh, thanks, Rory. So there, yeah, so Rory's popped into the chat the web address for all the apps. And as you can see, guys, there are loads. And some have got some quite good names. So trade people, Karen, often use Tradeify. And I'd keep an eye out for the ratings, both the volume of the rating, so how many people have reviewed that system and how many stars have they given that system. It's usually a good indication. So Timely looks pretty good. It's at 5 stars, but there's only been 21 reviews. So I'd just have a note of caution. But with pretty much all of these things, and again, it depends on your capacity, with pretty much all of these systems, all of these apps, all of these integrations, you can take a free trial of most of them, and it'd let you have a play around and see whether you think the functionality gives you what you want. So I hope that answers your question, Karen. Okay. So what's an app stack? Have you ever heard the term app stack? It's potentially slightly geeky, technical accounting language. It's basically saying, so what do you need for your business to operate effectively? And if we'd look down the menu bar on the left-hand side of that app sharing page, a number of these kind of categories would feature. So this is not designed to be exclusive. This is actually a diagram that a system called Go Proposal generates. So that's some software that helps accountants and advisors formalize the proposals that they give to clients. And obviously, the more the evolution of systems and tech and things, people are liking the visual view of what's going on. So this is an example of an app stack for a particular client. Yes, there is, Charlotte. If you hold that thought for 2 seconds, we'll get onto it. Well, a bit longer than 2 seconds, to be fair. But yes, I am going to talk about cash flow forecasting and forecasting in general. Payments. We've mentioned a couple of these names already. So Stripe is that credit card payment processor, as is iZettle. There's also things like WorldPro and PayPal, things like that. There's the bills and expenses. I am just going to talk to you about this one here, which is called TripCatcher. So it's a sometimes little known fact that if you are a business owner and you have your own car and you claim mileage expenses from your business from any driving that you do, you're allowed to claim. HMRC allows you to claim 45 pence a mile for the first 10,000 miles that you do in a tax year, and then you can claim, you can still claim, but at a lower amount above that. It used to be that people kept receipts and spreadsheets tracking their mileage. Well, TripCatcher is an app that, again, you can have on your phone. You can basically use it as a GPS system. So once you get in the car, you can click it to start, and it will monitor how far you've traveled to your destination. And you can then make that a return trip, and it calculates the mileage. It keeps a track of how many miles you've claimed. But here's the really crucial thing. It also works out for you how much VAT, if you're VAT registered, you can claim back on that mileage claim. And on average, business people that are claiming mileage underclaim VAT by around £250 a year for VAT on mileage, on fuel. The app will cost you the grand total of £18 a year. And it just automates, speeds up, makes really simple that claim and that identification of the VAT. So for spending £18, you can make sure you basically get £250 back. It's a bit of a no-brainer. It might be that this business doesn't have any need for e-commerce, but you might do. So things that we were just talking about, Shopify, WordPress, all those kind of things as plugins. Debtor tracking. So are you going to automate the chasing of payments? Might form part of your app stack. Reporting, I'm going to talk about in more detail. Do you run a payroll system? HR, so that time tracking I was just talking about with Karen, is one possibility that you could plug in there. Inventory, stock management. So if you've got physical stock, so I think it was Charlotte was mentioning she's got the wallpapers and things. You can integrate inventory management tools as well. It depends on how rich you need the functionality to be. Coming right around to the top, if you integrate a CRM system such as Capsule or HubSpot or something like that, it basically uploads all of those contacts in your CRM system into your accounting system. That then means that when you raise an invoice for that customer, it automatically pulls through the feed and the contact details of who it is that you're sending that stuff to. Again, I think the key question in any of this is, would you benefit? Would you benefit in terms of time and how much time and efficiency, but also how you want to present you and your business and the automation of it? And if there is sufficient justification, then the costs involved are relatively small. Probably the most expensive thing on this page is the system called Sin7, the stock management system. It's designed for slightly bigger businesses, so it's a few £100 as an entry point. The majority of the others will be single-digit pounds, £10 a month, something of that order. In the case of TripCatcher, it's £1.50. Okay. So I've mentioned Receipt Bank as a popular integration. It's by far the most populous integration with Xero, although as one of you pointed out, apologies, I forget who it was, actually Xero's functionality has caught up with Receipt Bank a little bit. So, but it doesn't mean they're not out there. Receipt Bank fairly recently had a valuation on the stock market of not the stock market of 350 million pounds. So they did what's called a funding raise. So it's a pretty big supplier. Deputy, I just mentioned, Karen, is the most recommended HR tool for people. Stripe, we've already talked about, is a really pretty cost-effective payment processor. So if you want to offer the option to take credit card payment, and that doesn't just have to be because you're selling physical products. I, providing professional services, offer the ability for customers to pay by credit card and have Stripe linked. That costs me a slight fee when they choose to accept that, but I want to give my customer every possible opportunity to pay me. And so I have weighed up that I believe that Stripe is a cost-effective thing for me to use. So it's about a 1% fee, somewhere in that kind of region, on the payments that you process. So it depends on the volume you're putting through, it depends on the size of them. But I'd far rather make it really easy for my customer to pay me and give them the option to pay by credit card. Chaser is when I was talking about the invoice chasing functionality in Xero, Chaser is an additional bolt-on that does that. Again, the additional value is not huge, but there are a variety of tools available to you as a Chaser customer. They have a thing called the Chaser Academy. They also allow a greater degree of flexibility about what you send to who, how, when. So the fact that you can, rather than have invoice reminders switched on, you can say, I want them on for this customer, but not for that customer. It just gives you a greater degree of flexibility with what you're doing. So again, it's not huge cost. It might be available via an accountant or an advisor, which would make it even more cost effective. And it's different horses for different courses. And then finally, I want to just talk about Go Cardless. So Go Cardless offers you the ability to set up direct debits. So nothing takes away the pain of chasing payment more than having a customer who pays by direct debit. Go Cardless is a system that enables you to automate that process, sync directly with the accounting system. And it takes a small percentage of each payment as its fee, and it's just a really cost-effective way of offering a great solution for your business if a direct debit is something that you can offer to your customers. If they and it's quite an interesting conversation. A couple of my clients use Go Cardless. It's quite an interesting conversation to have with a customer if you say, are you willing to sign up to a direct debit scheme? Because if they say no, they're pretty much admitting to you that they're not going to pay you on time. There's no reason for not signing up to a direct debit unless you want the ability to not pay on the date that that payment is due. So it kind of tells you something about your customer, but it doesn't suit every business. It won't work for everybody. It just depends on what it is that you do. Okay, as I say, there's more than 800 of these things. I've just picked out some of the most popular ones. So the final kind of element before we just talk briefly about how you might find an advisor or how you might find someone to work with, or the things that you can do, is about reporting. So this is an area that, in my opinion, Xero really needed to up their game. And so some of the additional tools that I'll talk about shortly, a bit like Receipt Bank, they exist and they were formed because what was available as functionality in Xero didn't exist for a long time. They have upped their game of late, and I'll show you a couple of things. And those of you that are already Xero users, I'll be really interested to know if you were aware of these reports, if people had made you aware of them. So this is a screenshot of a pretty standard profit and loss report for a company. It's just a download out of the system. It's pretty dull to look at, isn't it? So what you can do is put comparison in there. So you can have financial year 21 alongside 2020. That could be a month, it could be a custom date range. You can do year to date. You can play around with the date ranges. If you're looking at that report on your computer, any of those numbers where the number is blue, that's effectively a hyperlink, and you can then click into that account and see what the transactions are that sits behind that. But it's a pretty dull, drab report. It's the kind of thing that us accountants enjoy looking at, but you know, it's less visually impactful than some of the other stuff. So Xero, in response to COVID, pushed forward some stuff that they were already thinking of doing, and I'd be interested to know whether any of you have seen this. So this is called a business snapshot report. So on the left is a screenshot of the full report. On the right is it just slightly bigger. It's a bit more visual. There's the graphs, bar charts, different stuff. There's some key information pulled out. So those of you that already use Xero, were you aware that that report existed? No. Amy, Russell, were you answering yes to this question, or was it a previous one? So a mixture, mainly no's. Okay. So let me flip out of the system. So you should all have access to this. And if you work with an accountant or an advisor and they haven't told you about these reports, I'd ask them why. So let me go back to the system. Hopefully you can all see, I'll go back to the dashboard. Hopefully you can all see the Xero system here. And as ever, it's just taking a little bit of time. Okay. There's two ways, as I said, there's two ways that you can access most things. So the main reporting section of Xero is found through the accounting menu. So accounting on the menu bar, go 2 rows down, you get reports. And this is a summary of all the reports that are available to you through Xero. You can set up custom reports. There are some that only an advisor can see, so I can see some things that you can't. You can have drafts, you can have public, so if you filed VAT returns, you can see what you filed with HMRC and you can archive them. If you click on the star to the left-hand side of these reports, you can basically create a menu shortcut for that particular one. So here they've got a star against the new profit and loss report. If I click a star against statement of cash flows, direct method, and then go back here to the accounting menu, that report is now as a shortcut on that main menu rather than having to click reports and then find it. So if there are 2 or 3 reports that you use frequently or want to use frequently, I'd suggest that you make sure they've got the stars next to them and nothing else has, and then you can just speed up the process of finding them and articulating them. That particular report that I just showed you, however, is available through the business menu. And I'll talk about the short-term cash flow in a minute because that's the second one they've just rolled out. But the business snapshot is that report that I just flashed up on the slides. I can change the date range in the top right-hand corner, so I can have last month, last quarter, last financial year, year to date. I've got comparison in terms of numbers for the current financial year versus last financial year. and it's pulling out what are the largest operating expenses by category, for example. And it's just a bit more visual. It's just a bit more user-friendly. I'd be interested in your feedback. So that's that one. So it's accessed through the business menu, and it's called the business snapshot. The second one that they've done, and this was really specifically in relation to COVID, is the short-term cash flow. And this, so one of you asked about cash flow forecasting. I'm going to show you a couple of options in terms of slightly more overarching systems, but this one will give you a pretty good starting point for free in your system. So it gives you a projected bank balance based on what your balance is today. So this is on the presumption that your system has been kept reasonably up to date. What invoices are owed to you? When are they due to get paid? What bills are you due to pay? Which bank account do you want to use? What time frame do you want to look at? Do you want to look at the next 7 days? Do you want to look at the next 30 days? You can play around with it to say there's some suggested actions here. You can add, I didn't show you, but into the bills that are outstanding, both payment to you and payment to other people, you can add expected payment dates. So not the due date, you can amend and adapt and say that invoice was due on the 30th of July, but it hasn't been paid. I'm expecting payment because I've had a conversation on the 20th of August. And if you've done that, that will feed into this view of what your cash balance is likely to be at a specific point in time. So again, I'm guessing those of you that haven't seen the business snapshot are unlikely to have seen this one as well. Which leads me to, there are, as I say, the options, and again, you can work with advisors on this, but there are options to take this to the next level. The tracking categories, so Charlotte was asking about tracking, would depend on your feed, but the tracking categories enable you to look at reporting by geographic region, by product, by service, by department. It just enriches the functionality. But again, it's like any kind of reporting. It depends on what you put in will dictate the quality of what you get out. Okay, so if you're going to start to use tracking categories, make sure that you continue to use tracking categories. The way that I deliver training means that I have multiple sources of where that work can come from. I track that so I can assess how much money I'm spending versus how much money I'm generating and see which of those channels is the most effective for me to generate a return, for example. But you can also use stuff that looks a lot kind of whizzier. So it takes the visual stuff to the next level. So along the bottom bar near the menus for digital knowledge, you'll see the names of 4 systems. Okay. Float and Fluidly are specifically cash flow and cash forecasting systems. They take the reporting functionality to another level, and they use AI to really specifically say, for example, my customer, Jimmy, typically pays my bills on 42 days. So what's the impact of that? It allows you to run a variety of scenarios to play around with things. And this is where some of the so what comes in. So the beauty of forecasting and using your financial information is in a safe environment of a system is to test out the decisions you'd make and to preempt what might happen. Now, it would have taken a pretty brave person to have really predicted what was going to happen this year. But the ability in real time to take a view of your business and focus activity to make sure that your business is the one that survives is massive. So Float and Fluidly. Fluidly is the one that is picking up all the awards of the 2. Okay, so I'd really recommend that. Futurely and Fathom are more management reporting, forecasting at a more generic business level apps. So this screenshot is of Futurely. You can make those views, those reports look like exactly how you want them to look. They have some industry standards, so you can use a web retail business standard report, you can use an engineering business standard report, or you can customize it, you can make it your own. You can say, I don't want that stuff in a bar chart, I want it in a donut chart, I want it in a line chart. You can play around with it. You can make it look exactly how you want it to look. And you can also incorporate forecasts and budgets. You can do that in Xero as well, but in these systems, to track what you were expecting to do against what you've actually done is really visual, really in your face. You can also get commentary. So if your advisor uses a system like Futurely, they can provide commentary to you, and it just helps the richness of decision making in your business. Fathom, Futurely, it's a bit of a take your pick. I personally like the visuals of Fathom more than I like the visuals of Futurely, but again, it's a horses for courses choice. And just in case you were thinking that there's some kind of rule that the only forecasting and reporting tools that integrate with Xero all begin with an F, there's another one called Spotlight Reporting. Does exactly the same thing as Fathom and Futurely, and again, it's a horses for courses choice. But this is where you've got so much information about your business contained in an accounting system. Maximizing its value and its benefit can really make a difference to your decision making, and these reporting tools can really take you to the next level. Okay, I'm just going to put out a kind of 5-10 minute warning to say any final questions from any of you. It would be great if you can get them in so that we can cover them in the time. I'm also going to put up our final poll, and it's which of the features do you think you'd find most useful? And if that's if you're already a user, if it's something that you don't use, then do it on that basis. But equally, if it's stuff that you already use, then do please let me know. That'd be great. Got 10 votes in. $13 votes in, so final kind of shout out, just leave it open for another few seconds. Okay. So it kind of slightly warms my heart that half of you think the reports could be really useful. We've got paperless expenses at 14%, other at 14%. Obviously, it'd be interesting to know what they are, and bank feeds at 21%. So thank you for that, guys. Appreciate that. Right, final little bit, and then I'll pick up those questions. Is just about, so who can you get to help you with this? And what I would say is, appreciate some of you may be on a really tight budget. So there's stuff that you can do yourself, but also it might be more cost effective than you think to work with an advisor. So first things first, the steps that I would suggest you go through. Think about configuration. Think about what you want the system to do before you start using it. It's far easier to kind of set things up initially than it is to chop and change. However, that said, consider whether you're happy with the kind of free Xero options. They're not free because you're paying for a subscription, but the ones that come included versus the paid for options. Talk to experts about the benefit that you might get. But also, you don't need everything on day one. So just think about what you need to get going. And then you can always review and refresh the content that you've got over time. I'm going to talk about finding the right partners to work with. I'd also think about who the right people in your organization are to use the system. Is that you? I happen to know there's a virtual assistant on the call today who helps clients with their Xero. There are a multitude of options ranging from accountant, bookkeeper, specialist to person in your firm that just does it off the side of their desk to effectively some hired help. There are lots of options. So have a think about who it is that you want to do stuff. And then equally, don't shy away from thinking about appropriate training for the people that are going to do it. Okay, it can save an awful lot of time and effort, and it can maximize the value of the money that you're spending in the short term. Okay, a couple of things just to watch out for before I dive into those questions, just conscious of your time. Keep an eye out for people who say, who have a badge that says that they're a Xero partner. That means they have access to the preferential pricing. There are different tiers. Platinum is the biggest, gold, silver, bronze. Doesn't mean platinum is
I think we're just experiencing some technical difficulties here, so apologies for that. Just wait and see if it sorts itself out. Apologies for this, we're just getting this sorted out right now. Martin will be back shortly. It's a bit of a technical fault here. He's just been kicked out for some reason. This has never happened before, so it's the first time for everything here today. And he should be back very shortly now. So if you just hold on for about a couple of minutes, we'll be straight back into it. Appreciate you that. Thank you.
Hi everybody, humble apologies about that. Classic IT challenge, getting kicked out of a room. Hopefully a few of you are still there, and I'll kind of finish off the session, so forgive me whilst I just get back onto the slide pack. Classic challenges of IT. So let me share my screen. So apologies. What I was just saying was the partner status, the color of it, being a partner is a good thing. It means someone can access preferential pricing. The champion partner means that that person has gone through an additional layer of validation. And you might also see some of these badges which will say professional services specialist. So they're just things that you can keep an eye out for to find someone that specializes in the thing that you do. Okay. So let me go back. Did we have any outstanding questions? Because the ones that were there, I'm afraid, have got deleted because I've rejoined the session. So I'll put my contact details up again, but if anyone has questions for me, then do please shout. Happy to kind of hang on for a few minutes whilst anyone asks any questions. Appreciate that's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully it's been useful. And use either the Q&A or any of the other functions to ask a question.
We've got a question here from Matthew. I'm not sure if it's been answered already, but Matthew asks, I'm used to Sage 50 features like nominal codes, accruals, and prepayment.
Yeah.
Are these all in there and similar?
Yes, so there's a chart of accounts, which is the thing that drives the nominal code. So the numbering system might be slightly different, Matthew, but yes, there are nominal codes. And yes, you can use the system to create accruals and prepayment. So anyone who doesn't know what that's basically an adjustment based on timing within the account.
Perfect.